never should have taken that shortcut through the park. It was late, and I just wanted to get home, but that turned out to be the worst decision of my life. As I hurried down the moonlit path lined with trees, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I suddenly had the feeling I was being watched. I picked up my pace, but the path seemed to go on forever. The trees cast creepy shadows that followed me as I walked. Just as I was starting to think I was being paranoid, I felt a hand grab my shoulder from behind. I spun around with a gasp to find a man looming over me, wearing a twisted smile. He put a chloroform-soaked rag over my face before I could even scream. Everything went dark. When I came to, I was in a cold, damp room. It took my eyes a moment to adjust to the dim lighting. I tried to move, but found my arms and legs were bound. I opened my mouth to yell for help, but no sound came out. I had been gagged. Footsteps approached, and I saw the man from the park emerge from the shadows. He said nothing, just stared at me with a chilling intensity. I fruitlessly struggled against the restraints, whimpering into the gag. He kneeled down next to me, caressing my face. "Don't fight it, honey. You belong to me now," he purred. I recoiled in terror as the realization hit me. I had been kidnapped by a stalker. Over the next few days, he would come and go, sometimes muttering crazed things to me, other times just watching me squirm in silence. He barely fed me and only allowed sips of water. My body ached, and my mind grew foggy from exhaustion. One night he entered the room in a particularly agitated state. I had a bad feeling as he pacing back and forth, building in anger. Finally, he lashed out, backhanding me hard across the face. I cried against the gag, tasting blood. "Keep your mouth shut," he yelled, unhinged. He grabbed my throat, squeezing it tightly as I gasped for breath. Dark spots flooded my vision. Just before passing out, he released me. I wheezed and choked, trying to get air back into my burning lungs. All I could do was sob weakly, knowing no one was coming to save me from this madman. I was trapped in this nightmare. As the days dragged on, part of me started giving up hope. But then I noticed my restraints were becoming looser as I lost weight. I worked persistently to free my hands. One night after he left, I managed to wriggle one hand out of the ropes. I quickly untied myself and ripped out the gag. On shaky legs, I quietly crept to the basement door, locked. My heart sank, but I wasn't about to surrender. I was getting out of this hell. I frantically searched for another escape route. Finding a small window, I smashed it open, cutting my hands to ribbons. But I didn't care. Groaning with effort, I pulled myself through the tiny opening out into the cold night air. I was finally free. I ran as fast as my weakened legs could go until I found help. The police arrived quickly and the stalker was tracked down and arrested. I was safe at last, but sometimes at night I still have nightmares. I'm back in that cold, dark basement, muffled screams echoing endlessly in my mind. I never should have taken this house so cheaply. That should have been the first red flag. But I was desperate to find a place of my own after getting out of a bad relationship, and the rent was unbeatably low. Sure, it needed some work, but I didn't mind rolling up my sleeves to fix it up. If only I had known then the horrors that awaited me here. It started innocently enough. Strange sounds at night that would jolt me awake. Creaking floorboards and rattling pipes that sounded too much like footsteps. I'd searched the house top to bottom, but never found anything amiss. Just my overactive imagination, I figured. But then the notes started appearing. Disturbing messages scrawled on scraps of paper left on my pillow. "I'm watching you and you belong to me." My hands would tremble reading them, but I convinced myself a cruel prankster was sneaking them in to scare me off. If only I had listened to my growing fear instead of shrugging it off. But I didn't really start to panic until that fateful night when I returned home to find the power cut and all my doors and windows locked from the inside. My phone dead, no way to call for help. That's when I knew all the warnings had been real, and whoever had been leaving those notes was now here, waiting for me. I desperately rattled every door and window, but it was useless. I was trapped inside my own home. Warily, I made my way through the dark halls, casting sweeping beams from my flashlight into the shadows. My spine tingled with the sense that unfriendly eyes were watching me just outside the illumination. Finally, I came to a door left ajar leading down to the basement. Every instinct told me not to go down there, but I had no choice if I wanted to find a way out. Taking a deep breath, I descended the creaky wooden steps into the inky abyss below. Blindly, I felt along the cold stone walls until my hands grasped a string which I tugged, clicking on a single dangling light bulb. As the weak light spilled into the room, my blood turned to ice. Scrawled across the walls in what looked disturbingly like blood were the words "Welcome home." This was no prank. Someone had been living down here, lying in wait, like a spider anticipating fresh prey to ensnare in its web. That's when I sensed the movement behind me and whirled around. Through the gloom, I could make out the shape of a man lurking in the shadows just beyond the reach of the light. My stalker. He had come for me at last. I scrambled back up the stairs, hearing his eager footfalls gaining on me. I let out a panicked yelp as his icy fingers grazed the back of my neck before I slammed the door shut and blocked it with my body. His fists pounded menacingly on the other side, as if trying to break it down. I knew then this door was the only thing separating me from impending nightmare. I had to find a way out before he got to me. Running through the dark house, I searched desperately for an escape, praying for daylight to come and make this evil retreat. The slamming against the blocked door grew louder and more insistent behind me, warped voices whispering my name. At last, I discovered a tiny basement window I could just barely squeeze through. Without hesitation, I scraped and scruffed my way out into the night, running without looking back until I found help. As I finally caught my breath in the safety of the police station, recounting my story, the full weight of my ordeal crashed over me. I had come face to face with undiluted terror and somehow lived to tell about it. But I don't think I'll ever be able to shake the chilling memory of that pitch-black basement and the depraved eyes of the man who waited for me there. He's still down there, lurking in the shadows, biding his time. And the house is waiting, ready to lure in fresh victims and lock them in their own living hell. But I'm one of the lucky ones who somehow escaped and lived to tell the tale. I never thought I would be in a situation like this. I was just trying to get home after a long day at work, but fate had other plans for me. It all started when I got off the bus at my usual stop, about a block away from my apartment. I noticed a man standing on the corner, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. He was staring at me with a creepy smile on his face. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I tried to ignore him and walk faster. As I turned the corner, I heard footsteps behind me. I glanced back and saw that he was following me. He was walking faster than me, closing the distance between us. I felt a surge of panic and started to run. He ran after me, shouting something unintelligible. I looked for a place to hide, but the street was deserted. There were no cars, no people, no shops, nothing. It was like a ghost town. I reached the entrance of my apartment building and fumbled with my keys. I could hear him getting closer, his breath heavy and ragged. I managed to unlock the door and slammed it behind me. I ran up the stairs, hoping he wouldn't follow me. I reached my floor and ran to my door. I unlocked it and rushed inside. I locked the door and leaned against it, panting. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. I heard a loud bang on the door. He was there, pounding on it with his fists. He was screaming at me, saying things like, "Let me in, you bitch, and I'm going to kill you." I was terrified. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I told the operator what was happening and gave them my address. They said they would send someone as soon as possible. I hoped they would arrive in time. I moved away from the door and looked for a weapon. I found a kitchen knife and held it in my hand. I heard him kick the door, making it shake. He was trying to break it down. I heard a crack and saw the door splinter. He was almost in. I backed away, holding the knife in front of me. I prayed that he would stop, that he would leave me alone, that he would go away. But he didn't. He broke through the door and lunged at me. I screamed and stabbed him in the chest. He fell to the floor, blood gushing from his wound. He looked at me with a twisted expression of pain and anger. He reached for me, but I kicked him away. He groaned and stopped moving. He was dead. I dropped the knife and collapsed on the couch. I was shaking and crying. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had killed a man, a stranger, a creep, a monster. I heard sirens outside. The police had arrived. They knocked on the door and asked me to open it. I got up and walked to the door. I opened it and saw 2 officers. They looked at me, then at the body. They asked me what happened. I told them everything. They took me to the station. They said I acted in self-defense. They said I was lucky to be alive. They said I was brave. But I didn't feel brave. I felt scared. I felt sick. I felt guilty. I wondered why he chose me. Why he followed me. Why he attacked me. What did he want from me? What did he want from me? What did he plan to do to me? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. I wished I had never seen him. I wished I had never met him. I wished he had never existed, but he did, and he changed my life forever. He gave me a nightmare that I would never forget. He gave me a horror story that was true. It was a night like any other. I had just gotten home from my waitressing job and was looking forward to relaxing with some TV before bed. As I locked the front door and turned around, I let out a startled gasp. There was a man standing in my living room, a complete stranger. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" I demanded, my heart racing. The man just smiled calmly. "My name's not important. All you need to know is I've been watching you, and tonight's the night." He took a step towards me, and I saw he was holding a large kitchen knife, the blade glinting in the dim light. Real terror shot through me. I had to get out of there. I spun around and fumbled desperately with the door locks, my hands shaking. But before I could get the door open, the man grabbed me from behind. I screamed and thrashed in his arms as he dragged me away from the door. "This will be easier if you don't resist," he whispered in my ear. I could feel the cold steel of the knife against my neck. Frantic thoughts raced through my mind.
Why was he doing this? Why me?
I remembered my cell phone in my pocket. If I could just get to it, I could call for help. I went limp in his arms, pretending to pass out. When his grip loosened, I elbowed him hard in the ribs and lunged for my phone. He tackled me, and we crashed to the floor, my phone skidding away across the room. I cried and pleaded with him to just take what he wanted and leave. The man pinned me down and pressed the knife to my throat again. "Too late for that. You had your chance," he snarled. He drew the blade painfully slow across my neck. My screams turned to gurgles as I desperately tried to breathe through the thick, hot blood. The man watched impassively as I thrashed in agony on the floor. "Shh, just let it happen," he whispered. My vision started to go dark at the edges. I knew I was going to die. Suddenly, I heard the front door burst open. There were heavy footsteps and shouting. The pressure on my throat released as the man was yanked off of me. I gasped for air, choking on the blood. 2 police officers wrestled the man to the ground and wrenched the knife from his hands. One of the officers knelt next to me and applied pressure to my neck. "An ambulance is on its way. Just hang on." Through the haze, I realized my upstairs neighbor must have heard the struggle and called 911. As the paramedics rushed in and loaded me onto a stretcher, I got a last look at the man who had tried to end my life. His face was blank, showing no remorse. They led him away in handcuffs as he stared at me. I clung to consciousness during the frantic ambulance ride, praying I could hold on until we reached the hospital. The paramedic kept reassuring me and applying pressure to my neck. I knew I was losing a lot of blood. When we arrived at the EA, everything became a blur of activity. They whisked me into surgery to repair my wound. The doctor said it just narrowly missed my carotid artery. Recovery was a long, slow process, both physically and emotionally. For weeks, my neck remained bandaged. I had to slowly work to regain my voice and swallowing ability. Nightmares of that cold blade slicing into my flesh plagued my sleep. I kept reliving the moment I realized I was going to die. Police investigated, but could find no motive or connection between me and my attacker. He was a complete stranger who had randomly fixated on me for reasons unknown. Knowing he had been watching me secretly for who knows how long made my skin crawl. With time, the physical wounds gradually healed, though the scars would always remain. Emotionally, I was forever changed. I was anxious and fearful, no longer feeling safe in my own home. Just going about my daily routine filled me with dread that he could come for me again. My only solace was knowing he was behind bars, at least for now. But they could not guarantee he would remain imprisoned forever. The realization that I would spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder was almost too much to bear. Some nights, I would jolt awake in a cold sweat, feeling the ghostly knife pressed to my throat once more. Though he did not succeed in ending my life that night, a part of me died all the same. I was forever haunted by what that stranger tried to do to me, simply because my life meant nothing to him. My tale is a cautionary one, a reminder that evil can present itself when you least expect it. It can lurk right outside your door disguised as an ordinary face, so keep your own face hidden if you want to survive. Trust no one. Remain vigilant, because they're always watching, searching for the next random target to quench their sadistic thirst. Take care, or you may find yourself prey to such merciless cruelty. I'm living proof that it can happen to anyone, anywhere with no reason or warning. And once that cold blade touches your skin, it's already too late.